Hi, everybody. Yeah. So a while ago, Tara was actually one of the first guests that I had on here, but unfortunately, the sound didn't work when we recorded it. So we did a whole episode on time in Gaza. Yeah, where she lived for a couple of years and what brought her to Gaza and various things about living there. But the bulk of this episode is going to be discussing Palestinian exclusionary radical feminists, or PERFs, which is a Tara term that you need to pay her if you use.
Henry
Um,
the first one to coin that, but it wasn't like it was hard. It was just one letter.
yeah.
Weird, but
And it was also like a P is very similar to a T, so it wasn't even like a whole new letter.
well,
Yeah.
first of all, Rob,
So
I can hear you really well.
Yeah, so I guess it might be interesting to just do a quick recap of some of the stuff we discussed last time. It's interesting because my late grandfather was a very religious Catholic. And I remember in his 70s, or he was quite old, with his wife, my grandma, they had a chance to take an international holiday and they went to Palestine. And I remember my immediate family was kind of like, why are you going to essentially a war zone for, in their mind, for your international holiday? But,
Yeah.
it's because he was a very religious man. And now I think yeah, he got to see so much stuff that doesn't exist anymore. How did you end up in Gaza?
Well, I'm
By religion?
yeah, not on purpose. After I graduated with my bachelor's degree with a major in sociology, and I minored in women's studies and American literature. So you can imagine the job market opportunities were just abundant. But I went with what I found interesting. Anyway, so I thought, oh, I want to travel around, but I didn't have much money. And so one of my teachers said, well, why don't you go travel around and teach English and figure out what you want to do for graduate school? And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. So I ended up in Seoul, Korea for a year or almost a year teaching English at a hagwon. And for those who don't know, they really work those kids in Korea. So they do a full day of school, they go home and have a snack, and then they go to hagwons in the evening, sometimes till 6 till 9, and do English, math, a variety of other things. So I was teaching English to very tired children in South Korea. Was great, but my mind was melting. And so then I just went online and I saw this thing that Microsoft in Shanghai was asking for what they called communication specialists. And so I applied for that and I got that. So I ended my contract a bit early and shifted to Shanghai. And the reason why this taps into Gaza is because my contract was about to end. I realized that the corporate sector and the kind of Microsoft cult was not for me, although I really had a great time in China. And the people I just kind of crossed paths with in Seoul, Korea, there's a couple from Canada and they had just retired. And I guess you can kind of retire fairly early from teaching in Canada. And so they were traveling around and they were teaching at the same hagwon I was at. We briefly crossed paths and they had taken a position at the American International School in Gaza. And one of them took the principal position and his wife was going to teach at kindergarten. So I just got this email like, hey, Tara, I don't know how things are going at Microsoft, but if you'd be interested in teaching, please let us know. And I was like, ooh, interesting. And so that's how I ended up in Gaza. And like some of your family members, I was also, because this was after 9/11, and I heard all this stuff like, I can't believe you're going over there to live with those terrorists, those killers. And I was like, holy moly. And I just went there because I was like, this is a great opportunity. I'll go. So I did. And that's how I ended up living and teaching in Gaza for 2 years from July 2002 to June 2004 during the
Right.
second, yeah,
Yeah. So right after 9/11.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So you obviously got your government issue up when you got off the plane in Gaza and had a male escort for you to walk behind wherever you went. Or did something else happen? What was it like? Yeah. In terms of those types of stereotypical things that people imagine. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I was never sexually assaulted. I was never stoned. I was never raped. I was never asked why I didn't cover. I was never made to cover. and none of that stuff. But also, obviously, you stand out, and I wasn't the only single female teacher. But if I wanted to go to the store, I'd go to the store. If I wanted to go to the market, I would go to the market. If I wanted to go to the UN club, even if I was going to walk home, I didn't want to wait for a taxi, or it was just a nice night, and I'd walk from the coast to the UN Beach Club, Gaza Beach Club, to our apartment. I never had any problems. You did have is that people will look at you. The guys will look at you, they'll kind of want to smile at you and they kind of want to follow along. They present it like they want to help you out. Oh, where do you want to go? I'll take you. Oh, nice eyes, this type of thing.
Right.
That was really the extent of it because you stick,
Yeah.
But also there's a class division, of course, in Gaza. So there's the original inhabitants, many of which were the landowners and more well-off families that have passports, maybe have citizenship also in Jordan or Egypt or UK or France or wherever, and the refugees that came. And so it was the wealthier families who petitioned the American, there's a group that runs several international schools, American international schools in Egypt and the Middle East. And they petitioned them and said, hey, we know it's not going to be economically viable, but if we float it, will you open up a school here? So basically saying it's your school, like your rules, your accreditation, all that, but we'll float it financially until at some point it gets, viable. So they had like about 30% of the students were from those families. And then about 70% were scholarship kids, were kids from the refugee camps and poor areas.
Right.
Yeah. And so basically the word was out, like, don't fuck with these people. But also everybody who's been to Palestine or Middle Eastern countries, being a good host is quite important. So it's like, they're coming here. It's difficult for them. They want to teach our children. And so if a guy had gotten really inappropriate with one of us, it would have been taken care of. Was my understanding. But I never had that happen personally to me. And other female colleagues who were single and stood out like I did, we were all bright white.
Yeah, giving everybody snow blindness.
None of us covered. But of course, we weren't walking around in hot pants and halter tops, yeah? So yeah, I'd be safer walking home from a restaurant at night in Gaza than I would in any Western major city. I would say that would happen.
Right.
Doesn't mean that would happen. Okay, things could happen. I'm not saying there's no sexual abuse in Gaza. People, calm down. Calm down for a minute.
Yeah.
And also, I have to say, I'm chubby now, but back then I was,
Yeah, I've seen the photos. I'd just have to go for a second, but I'll be like 30 seconds. I'll be right back.
All right. So, hi, everyone. Again, the plan for today, after my time in Gaza in the Middle East, is we want to go over what we found, or maybe it was obvious to other people, but it was a surprise to me, just how many feminists or women's rights activists are quite genocidal or can flip a switch to genocidal after one incident, October 7th, the day the earth stood still, day one. So that's what we want to talk about, because feminists, like anybody else, or women's rights activists like anybody else, have biases and blind spots and whatnot. But I'm quite surprised how okay they are with the annihilation of a group of people because Islam or hijab. I'm for women's rights. I'm for equality. And then I went to being kind of feminist critical when the whole trans stuff started, and also a bit when I saw how they reacted to how easy they swallow anything that's negative about Islam. There's Zionist feminists, there's Imperialist feminists, there's colonial feminists, there's the most stupid, thick. I've heard stuff from these women that make my eyes melt. I'm like, what am I in the, Jim Crow South? And just boldly. So that's what we want to talk about.
Yeah, it's crazy. I probably took a similar path. I dropped out of a gender studies degree at some point many moons ago, but that's what I was studying. Well, I started in journalism and switched a whole bunch of things, but at one point I was doing gender studies and it was called gender studies. So it was like just as that switch had started to happen, the trans thing hadn't really kicked in yet, but we were getting primed for that sort of a thing. And yeah, I think I've probably taken a pretty similar path to you in terms of like starting to realize, like, because I was a trot very early on,
There's
joined
seems
a
to know
trot.
these terms, yeah? I
Yeah, yeah.
recently figured out this, well, recently, a year or so ago. I'm like, why does everyone keep on asking me if I'm a trotter or a tanky? Like, what is this? It's like the red pill, blue pill, and Matrix. Anyway,
So they were pro-feminist and would talk about how some communists weren't, and some communists thought that feminism was bourgeois. And I was trained to dismiss that and did so. Then I guess just kind of realized, like, because I was normally around and like reading feminists that at least had some kind of critique of capitalism. So it wasn't that glaring. But then after getting involved in the GC thing, you've got like a whole bunch of like right wingers essentially, which is fine. But yeah, they have no like analysis of capitalism whatsoever. And then you start to really see how it is actually quite bourgeois and
Mhm.
how they don't have any like conception of like where feminism comes from and its relationship to class struggle. So like one of the things that I would always point out is like you can tell that like the third and fourth and whatever other waves of feminism are bullshit because the first two waves like corresponded to massive upswings in class like militancy. And so they were kind of in some senses a reflection of that, but then also an attempt to co-opt that militancy and be like, okay, we can't give you the whole economic system, but we can make a few concessions to like women so you'll be kind of demobilized. So for example, I was quite shocked to learn that British women, so like Marxists have always argued for universal voting and women's right to vote. And capitalists always said that was unrealistic and they were the reason why it wasn't a thing. And so for decades prior. And then when the Russian Revolution happened and Russian women were about to become the first women in Europe to get the vote, in between the time when the Russian Revolution happened and the Soviet Union actually became a country, that's when British women got the right to vote. And I don't think the Turf Island TERFs have any like concept that, yeah, what happened in the UK didn't happen in isolation and was actual part of, yeah, a much broader struggle. And their whole like, oh, well, the women did it just because they were ladies and they did it for ladiness.
ladies are doing it for themselves.
And it's like, actually, there were groups of men who were like pro women's suffrage for a very long time, not to mention shit tons of like communist women who were like both pro revolution and pro women's suffrage and saw like bourgeois feminists as essentially like spelling out this revolution for proletarian women for the benefit of bourgeois women. And so then that's how you start to see that, yeah, it, in many ways, yeah, it can be and is a bourgeois ideology. In some senses, probably not. Yeah, it probably isn't that different from Zionism, just in the sense that, like, it's like an id pol thing divorced from class and being like the same way that Zionists will be like, no, this is what you need for Jews to have anything. And without this, we would be like all dead. You get the same message from feminists who are like, yeah, this is the only thing that was ever good. And anyone who attacks it is just trying to kill us all.
Well, and
Yeah.
I think some of them are, and some of them are so rape obsessed that I'm surprised, and probably some of them have like, if you haven't been raped today, thank a feminist. I mean, it's insane. And if I may interject, yeah, yeah. One of the things that I've come to realize as I've taken a more critical eye to feminism is I don't give them no cards. Yeah. You don't get the patriarchy card, you don't get the rape card, you don't get any card, no card. When looking back at how I'm not sure why it is. I don't want to get too far off track with this episode, but they've been largely able to construct their own mythology, their own history. Yeah. And thereby become the gatekeepers or the owners of quote unquote women's history or women's rights or the patriarchy and all of that. So I think that one of the things I want to do, and because I came across this analogy when I wrote, just to plug, Feminism's Woman Problem that Savage Minds published. So go check that out.
Definitely do. It's really good.
Zionism is to Jews as feminism is to women. How Zionists treat Jewish people who don't go along with the program. And you'll see a lot of similarity to how a lot of feminists treat women who are, non-feminist conforming women, which of course Muslims who cover are. This that I'm working on, that the real ire that these genocidal feminists, these purse have, these, Islam is the rape, it's rape and women are slaves and everything bad, Islam's coming to get them, all this stuff, is that their real resentment is for the women, not for the men. Yes. But what I wanted to get back to is that, that we just have, I don't know what it was. If it was like, oh, well, the women are coming into academia now in larger numbers. They're setting up their places, women's studies. So they can do, and we'll let them just be on women's history, all of this stuff. And when you look at that and you start to poke holes in, when you start to realize how many of these feminists, especially in the 19th century, the first wave and second wave, were actually funded by really rich families.
Right.
And women, and you realize that with like even Simone de Beauvoir, who I'm not going to throw babies out with bathwater. We all are cracked vessels, as Professor West would say, but they went after the housewife. I mean, they were brutal with the housewife, and mocking her.
Right.
Enemy. So it was like, under the guise of saving, of liberating, they had to go and tell this gospel of how what's really wrong with everything in your life is the patriarchy, is the man. And I'm not saying there weren't obviously issues. Yeah. But you go in that and you're like, and so when you mentioned the not having a political economy, of course, there are materialist feminists or Marxist aware feminists, etc. But a lot of them, it just becomes very cultural. It becomes the patriarchy, or now toxic masculinity, or is, and women are sugar and spice and everything nice, and men are the root of all evil and marked with original sin, and they just need to get their shit together and all this stuff. This is pretty weak tea. This is pretty, I mean, not as weak as trans women or gender ideology stuff that for some reason has just been given a different set of standards, especially for intellectual and philosophical viability and credibility, than other stuff, and I don't know why that is, or what or how, if we're going to come around it now. But this idea of pitting men against women at the population level, as if that's going to get us anywhere, as if these women could last a day. Well, actually, they could last a day, a week, if they were to extricate themselves from everything that the men produce, maintain, or have produced. I would say good luck to you, ladies. And bottom of the line, don't be afraid. We need to subject feminism to brutal critique. The more I look into it, the more I'm just like, God, did I just not see this before? Especially now, what's coming out after October 7th. I'm like, bucks on their house. We need to open it needs to be sublated into something else.
One of the reasons why I started, it was explained to me of, why you should use, say, the term patriarchy as opposed to sexism, was that you're then talking about like a system, and that sounds, a bit Marxisty in that like if there's like some reality to it. But I think, ultimately, like a lot of what they're talking about is capital, and capitalism is the driving force, because it's not like that's what separates capital from feudalism. It's not a patriarchal system. Anyone can own capital, and it's like something like 20% of the world's billionaires are women. And so if all it was going to take was to get some billionaire women, and they were then going to have like this natural class solidarity with other women, then we would already have, a much more egalitarian situation. One of the things that I also find funny, you were talking about like the funding of the early feminists. I got a book called The Suffragette Bombers, and it was about like, yeah, all the terrorism essentially that the suffragettes participated in. And a lot of them were fascist too. Like a lot of them were like actual, well, not a lot, but there were a number of women in the leadership of the WSPU or whatever it was that had strong fascist sympathies. And yeah, I just think it's interesting now where they're like, oh, terrorism, you can't support terrorism. And they'll be really down on any sort of protest that like gets in the way of ordinary people. So anyone blocking a road, or, oh, you poured some like paint on a painting, like what a horror. Like, don't you understand? That's just going to alienate people. And it's like, you fuckers were like literally burning churches down on the regular and putting bombs.
Oh, not them. They're idols.
Yeah, the people whose flag you wave, and you seem to think that like waving a terrorist flag makes you a terrorist. And yeah, that's what the suffragette flag was, the flag of a terrorist organization, essentially.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's bizarre.
The whole point of protest is to disrupt things. And yeah, I'm not going to say that the best thing to do is to make people trying to get to work or get to their doctor's appointment on the expressway to block them, rather than to go and try to inhibit the activity of people who are in charge and making all the money. But what I would say to the feminism is, in terms of the story they tell themselves about themselves, is that from the beginning, we get this idea that everybody was on board. All the women are on board. Some of them are more vocal, but everybody was on board. It's not true. There was a lot of pushback against suffragettes, and a lot of suffragettes, it seems from what I looked into, were more middle class and upper middle class. It was not what we would consider a grassroots, poor and working class woman driven thing. Like, we really need the vote. And I'm not saying that I'm against women having the vote. I'm just saying is that be careful of any group that wants to become the spokesperson for half the population. Yeah.
Very similar thing happened here with gay marriage. That was a campaign that the majority of gay people didn't support. And I remember reading an article by like gay campaigner from the Trot group, my old Trot friends, like talking about how proud they were that they managed to like switch the gay population from being indifferent or opposed to marriage to being in support of it. And it's like, surely that should have come from them. And then you go campaign, not you decide what they want, you tell them, convince them, and then like, yeah. But anyway, do you want to move on to our slideshow?
Sure.
Or our slides?
I will get this up here. Yes. So yeah, I'll just, for people who aren't aware, on the left, I think it's your left, you see the graphic of the lady with the suffragette flag colors and an Israel sweater. And this is the perf, because the Palestinian excluding radical feminists. I'm not a TERF, I'm a tag, a TERF against genocide. I know there are only two sexes and you can't change your sex, and it's stupid to pretend that a man's a woman and a woman's a man, or that people are both or neither, or can switch back and forth depending on the word. And I know that Israel is a lunatic timeshare protection racket imperial outpost colony that is the tip of the sword of Western imperialism. They want greater Israel, and sometimes it's sped up and sometimes the project is slowed down, but that's my understanding of Israel geopolitically. Yeah. But what you found is, and I'll let you talk about Kelly J. Keene's blacklisting of people who were not sounding like they just crawled out of Bibi Netanyahu's asshole or took the IDF tour and swallowed it whole. From the go, it was been entirely Israeli centered, especially on the hostages. Everything is filtered through that. There's no effort or capacity to look at anything from the point of view of the Palestinians. And it doesn't matter how many bodies pile up. It doesn't matter what the Israelis say, do, post, boast. These ladies have dug in. So that's the perf. Yeah. So they're for women's rights. So women's rights activists, femalists, party of women, let women speak, all with an asterisk. Yeah.
Does not apply.
And then in the middle of this graphic, you have Women's Declaration International, which came online, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago or something. I'm not sure. Women's Declaration International started in the United States, US-based organization. And I think a lot of it, I think it started to combat this trans women or women crap. Yeah. Okay. Women are adult human females. The only people that can become women are girls who make it through puberty. This is the serious regression of women's rights. They started posting about Afghanistan. And if you look at Women's Declaration International, any of their chapters, they have chapters in Canada, United States is the main one, UK, and now Afghanistan. How many times do you think they've posted anything about Palestinians or Gaza or anything critical of Israel or their government's backing of it? How many times do you think they've mentioned this?
I know the answer, but you would imagine like at least maybe, a handful of times given how he was. Yeah.
Here, baby.
Yeah.
The Afghan woman, they stand with her. They stand for her so much that they put words in her mouth and dreams in her head.
Yeah.
So that's where the cult of the Afghan woman comes in. Do you want to say something before I go on with any of this?
Yeah, I had a few quick things. One was like I always knew or suspected KJK, Keen, Posey Parker. Yeah. I started calling them the pyromaniacs of whiteness instead of the party of women once they started endorsing burning down migrant hotels, or at least KJK did. So I always knew she had some dumb ideas regarding Islam. And I actually I was listening to some trans thing where one of the anti-fascist researchers was talking about how he'd been following KJK for a while and that she'd actually started out as anti-halal kind of campaigner. Remember that was a thing maybe 10, 15, 12 years ago. That's what all the anti-Muslim people were doing, was saying halal certification funds terrorism. They were arguing that whoever does the certification is connected to terrorism. So if we allow halal certification, then we're funding terrorism, was their basic claim. But
you're pretty slow.
Do you remember prior to October 7, Kelly J. Keane saying something to the effect of I don't know enough about Palestine, Israel to have an opinion on it. And normally I agree with the last person I've heard. So if I hear someone from Palestine talking, yeah. So that's definitely different to her post-October 7 attitude, but is very similar to say Megan Murphy, who's good friends with Kelly J. Keane, who admitted she didn't even know what Zionism was prior to October 7th. So I think probably the vast majority of them were in that situation of had never thought about the issue prior to this. And yeah, then just got spoon-fed the Hasbara from their communities and took that on face value.
Douglas Murray. They love Douglas Murray, Konstantin Kisin.
Oh, God.
Should we go through some examples of Palestinian exclusionary radical feminists?
Well, I just wanted to get to two quick things first. Regarding Women's Declaration International.
Okay.
They're connected to WOLF, Women's Liberation Front, which from my understanding was the feminist wing of Deep Green Resistance. Yeah. And I
because Lear Keith is one of the main founders, and she was also with Derek Jensen.
Used to be I've read a lot of Derek Jensen and used to I still think there's some value to his work, but I'm less obsessed with it than I was. And it's interesting because, yeah, it seems like Lear herself is really behind Israel. I tried to do some searches through the Deep Green Resistance Twitter and stuff, and they have some stuff from 15 years ago, but there's nothing more recent than that. And then, yeah, both Wolf and DGR have nothing post October 7th.
If I may interject, they peddle the rape hoax. This is after it was widely debunked that there was no evidence of any kind of mass rape on October 7th, nor were there any beheaded babies or burned babies or anything like that. One baby was killed during October 7th. Yeah, I don't know the circumstance of that baby's death, but I know if you have a list now, the official list of the deaths on October 7th, there is one baby. But they not only haven't said anything And you don't have to be anti-Zionist to say, can we ease up on the child killing?
Yeah.
And
Could we
we've
get
got
some baby formula into Gaza? Could we get some anesthetics so women aren't having C-sections without?
no, but they post this. Sexual violence was widespread and systematic during the October 7th attack. Rape and gang rape occurring in 6 different occasions, according to a report using testimony never heard before. This is all debunked. There's no evidence of it. No credible evidence of it. This is just, they just throw this out there. So, wolf ladies, you really want to peddle rape hoaxes? That's what you want to do?
Yeah.
It's clear to me that all these organizations are Zionist dominated. So Wolf's never posted anything critical about what Israel's reaction and their government's support of it since October 7th. Neither has Women's Declaration International, but oh my God, they really care about the Afghan woman. And it's not because they want to launder their guilt or shame. We're not against Muslim women. We don't have it, blah, 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 blah. At least. And of course, I will admit that when you hear these things from Afghanistan, I'm just like, Jesus, calm down, Taliban. If it's true, if we just assume that the reports coming out of there are all true, I'm not hearing anything that I would support or that I wouldn't support the women there, if they were to do it in a way that doesn't cast it as a Western imperial NGO bullshit, because that's going to be not help them out. Anyway.
Two things on that. I remember seeing something about a Israeli PR company or somebody had done research into what would outrage like foreign audiences the most. And they had like everything like, what's your reaction to, civilians killed? What's your reaction to civilians hurt? What's your reaction to hostages taken? And basically the only thing people cared about was like mass rape. One of the lowest ones was hostages taken. Nobody gave a shit. Like they didn't like hostages being tortured or anything like that, but just the taking of hostages like didn't raise anybody's like thing at all. And so I think they knew that they had to have that to really like get people behind them. So they just said it happened like regardless, the same with the 40 beheaded babies, like just say it. And then, yeah, they always pretend as though they're the first people to have ever cared about probably man. But in my old trot group, we had conferences and we would invite women from Rawa to come and attend. And they did. The Revolutionary Association of the Women of Afghanistan or something to that effect.
Actually run by Afghanistan women in Afghanistan, as I recall.
Exactly. And, this was back like post 9/11. And Rawa was like, no, the burqa is not like something we're concerned about at all. What we're concerned about is the US military coming in and bombing our country and the sanctions. And these idiots don't seem to understand, like, okay, let's try to come up, dumb people find metaphors and analogies hard, but a good way to illustrate points to anyone who.
We're talking to our audience now. We're not talking to these crazy genocidal feminists. Take analogies.
The comparison I would give is like, say China decided that like US women were being oppressed by trans, and the way that they were going to solve that problem was to like militarily invade and basically like cut off all food to America, like in an effort to like assist in their invasion process to help the women from the oppression of transgenderism, of course. Like, what do you think that would do? Do you think that would be successful? And do you think that would actually help to undermine transgenderism in the US? Or would people start to rally around it as like, this is our American thing against those evil Chinese people who are like starving us to death and killing us? And yeah, they don't seem to like apply that to anywhere else, which is like exactly what happened in Afghanistan. Afghanistan now is worse than it was in, say, the 90s, precisely because of the US intervention, I would argue, particularly because now the Taliban know the international community have no cards to play. What are you going to do? Reinvade again and like lose more? The same thing with like women in Iran. The movement to kind of relax the restrictions around, wearing veils and stuff like that was quite popular and quite fierce. But once the West endorsed Israel killing civilians in an essentially unprovoked attack on Iran, suddenly every woman who's part of that movement goes, oh, these Western women don't actually give a shit about what happens to me or my kids. All they're concerned about is the perception that Islam is being weakened. And if I need to die in order to help that happen, they're more than happy for that to go ahead. The things that they advocate in order to fix these problems just make them worse. Yeah.
Yeah, their paradigm is Islam bad. Islam is it's just rape and slavery and the most misogynistic thing ever and barbaric the stuff. Islam contains all that for them. That's all you need to know. It's like, you guys are secular missionaries. You're there to spread your good news to convert the ladies. Yeah, like every imperialist or colonialist or insurgent's always wanted. It's good to get a hold of the women who have the babies and raise the children and, actually are how civilization continues. It's just mindless. Since we got into Afghanistan, we'll save some of the more of the eyebrow melting genocidal feminist statements for later. And I'll bring up the cult of the Afghan woman here to absolve Western feminists of all their sins. They just really care about the Afghan woman. So here's the kind of stuff that WDI Afghanistan posts. You have this lady in traditional some Afghani wear, and she's imagining herself as a doctor. And then you have another one from this month from an Afghan woman, they say. I want to count who truly stands with me during these difficult times. If you are with me, reply with yes. I'm counting every one of you. Your support means everything. And if anybody goes and looks at this post, it is like a religious revival. You have these women like, yes, I'm with you. Yes, I stand with you. All these Western women, all these saviors, these white women's burdens, they're going to save their sister. Oh, yes. I guess all the Afghan ladies are dreaming of escaping their country and their culture and going in a high-rise office space in a nice white suit and maybe rejecting people's health insurance claims. So I was like, what in the Orientalism is this?
Yeah.
And they got some pushback because people noticed that almost every time this Women's Declaration International Afghanistan posted, the J.K. Rowling would repost it, saying how her heart breaks for Afghan women and why aren't countries doing more. And of course, if you go and look at J.K. Rowling, she has also mentioned Gaza 0 times. One statement about what has befallen the women and children in Gaza or in Palestine more broadly, Syria, Lebanon, etc. And I don't mention just the women and children because I don't care about men, but because these ladies are feminists, yeah? They're all about the women and the children. All about the safeguarding. Don't like that toxic masculinity. Don't like that patriarchy. War. I'm assuming that means like warring and going crazy when somebody does you wrong or upsets you. Apparently not. So people were saying like, and they blocked me, but I was also like, isn't it interesting how there seems to be a connection between people who are either silent or support Israel's annihilation campaign in Palestine and how much they've expressed their concern and stand with Afghan women. I found it curious. Do you want to read this lovely statement from WDI Afghanistan and then tell me what they're missing or tell our listeners what they're missing?
Yeah.
Or I can, whenever you like.
Sure. Okay, I'll read it. I'm not sure why some people have a problem with Afghan women. This page is specifically for Afghan women who have been living without basic rights, and WDI Afghanistan is their voice to the world. Yet some comment asking, why don't you speak about Gaza or why not support women there? Let me be clear, Afghanistan has suffered over 50 years of war. Yeah, where did a lot of those wars
It gets better, Rob.
Which Muslim country came to defend Afghan women and people? On the contrary, many contributed to the chaos. Where were the voices from Gaza or other others when Afghan women were suffering for decades. In fucking Rawa, in the giant anti-war movement that campaigned against the war in Afghanistan that was like as historically, yeah. Anyway, I guess like
This
Iraq and
was think
Afghanistan.
that Gazans were hip on American imperialism? Really? Anyway, go ahead.
We want justice for women everywhere, including Gaza. But let's also ask why Gaza is in this situation today. Right. So it's not just that we don't know anything about it. We
Oh
haven't.
God. Yeah.
Yeah, it is the result of a version of Islam imposed by its own people, just like in Afghanistan under the Taliban. This isn't about ignoring one group. It's about finally listening to Afghan women who have been silenced for too long. Yeah. Classic. Yeah, part of the thing that made them post this was that someone asked, where does the money go? You say you're raising money. And her response was like, I spend it on myself, basically, which might have been this person trying to be, sarcastic. But yeah, they didn't take it that way. And
Do you think that they screened this post with Afghan women?
Russia, yeah. Oh, definitely.
You can't find a few. I mean, just like there's Miami Cubans, there's probably Miami Afghan women.
Yeah.
There's also Iranian diaspora who, love to party the CIA line. Not that there isn't anything to be critical about in these regimes, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. So what's the next one?
Okay, so as I remember you mentioning, they really wanted to push rape and beheaded babies right from October 7th before the dust had cleared. They had this right on the top drawer to start pushing out all the Hasbra. But even though people still peddle that, they had the problem that there was no evidence of it. And then you notice that all of a sudden, the Israeli hostage sanitize all the genocide because they're not IDF occupation soldiers. They're not administrators for apartheid and occupation, ethnic cleansing. They're not illegal, crazy settlers or religious fanatics. None of that. No, they're the hostage. And you saw this sanctification. They were just dancing, or he got kidnapped from his tank. It's like, what? So you have that, and now you have the Afghan woman. So if you, quote unquote, this is my theory. If you stand with Afghan women and you care about the Israeli hostage, you can say any nasty shit you want. Go for it.
Absolutely.
I don't know how long this fetish is going to go on, how long these two cults can last, but they're still sticking with it. And they reverse it on you. Anybody who has an issue with this white woman's burden, this Orientalism, any kind of concern about who are these Afghan women who you're relaying messages for, or etc. No, it's none of that. It's just that we don't care. They're good. They care about these women who nobody else cared about. And if you have an issue with it, you're mad. You don't care about the Afghan women. You just Jews.
Yeah. And if there are women who disagree with them, they're terrorists and they basically deserve to die.
They'll be like, well, you should go. These feminists who are supposed to hate rape above all else because they think that everybody's raping constantly all the time in these countries. And they'll be, you should go over there. They're basically telling you to go over there and get raped. So they're like, why don't you go to Gaza and hang out with Hamas? I'm like, I lived there for 2 years. Don't threaten me with a good time. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, well, you must work for them if you're not as irrationally terrified as I am. Yeah.
So again, and then Killer J. Keane, of course, this weekend, the whole of London and other major cities will be shut down as they march for women of Afghanistan. Kidding. So again, she doesn't like anybody protesting against the US, UK, EU, Modi-backed Israel. That's terrible. That's bad. They're all stupid leftist women who don't realize how evil Islam is and how they just want to cover you and rape you, enslave you, this type of thing. Halal your food, I guess. That's also bad. She blocked me a while ago, but anytime anybody wanted to point out, just like, have you considered the history, factual historical record, she would just play the Hamas card. Hamas is like a shield. Yeah?
Absolutely.
Why don't you talk about Afghan women? She hates the hijab and the niqab because that's what's really important.
Yeah, I'm almost certain like, if she's not being paid now, that is on her because she's definitely doing the work. And it's, yeah, very anti-feminist for her to do this work for free and not be paid. And yeah, given that there are influencers with much smaller platforms who are getting thousands of dollars from various Israeli Hasbara outfits, I can't imagine she's not getting paid by them now. And so that economic incentive, I think, would definitely have sealed off any opportunity to try and break in there with any sort of nuanced beyond what she's already got.
Well, we can only go by what she says and what she does and posts. We don't know what's going on in her mind, of course, or anybody else. But yeah, she will justify it. If one of my kids had been killed that day, I also would burn the whole place down, blah, blah, blah. But the inability to apply that to people other than Israelis. And also, it's like, and are you saying that's a good thing? There's a reason why people who are directly related or victims of a crime don't decide what punishment is right. If someone, did X, Y, or Z to my kid, I would have all kinds of feelings and revenge fantasies, maybe. But would anyone say, yeah, your government should totally empower that? And that should be their policy? Kill.
I remember a teacher in high school basically saying that to me when I was sort of arguing anti-death penalty stuff and was like, what would you want to happen? And it's like, you don't care what I want to happen in any other context, but suddenly once I'm enraged and full of bloodlust, now you're like, oh yeah, what policy would you like to implement?
But it's also interesting, again, with these genocidal feminists or these perps, they will believe absolutely anything that's negative about Islam. Case in point is this thing that made the social media rounds, at least on X last week, I think. So, world, Afghan women with one eye. This isn't a dystopia. This is the reality of 2025. In Afghanistan, women are now officially told that one eye is enough to see. They are instructed to cover the other eye with a patch under the burqa. This is not about religion. This is about control. So she comes out and says this is about hatred. So someone informs her this isn't true. However, what is true is that countless Palestinian women and girls have been blinded by Israel's artillery. And then Kelly J. Keane responds, it's unusual to see a mother with her child. Still, at least she's not holding her as she cries because that's not what mothers do, ... Implying that this is either staged or that Muslim women don't really care about their kids.
Yeah, she's done that a number of times. There was a woman, the video was like, what the fuck had happened? Like she'd lost 4 kids and her husband on the same day and was basically talking about it. But she obviously used the term martyred, which like...
Martyr triggers them.
Yes, yeah. And Kelly J's response was essentially like, martyred? Why is she thinking about like that at a time like this, blah, 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 basically being like, she's not really sad about her children dying.
Muslim women want their kids to grow up and be killing Jews.
Yeah, that's literally what she thinks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're fucking disgusting people.
Anyway, so Kelly J. Keane, a few weeks ago, she's branched off. So Let Women Speak, and all props to Let Women Speak and how they did Facing the Trans Madness. Great. But they've branched off now into being anti-Islam. I mean, just rabidly anti-Islam. And so they had an event in the park in London, I don't know, a month ago, and I call it Veil Face. And what they did is they had these things made, which is free your face. And then they marched and they symbolically freed their face because of the women, the enslaved, voiceless, powerless women in Middle Eastern and Islam dominated countries who are trapped in a cloth prison. So there was another incident where they were having Let Women Speak, and she approached someone in a park. There was a family in the park, and 1 or 2 of the women were covered, and she went there and asked them why they cover their face. Why doesn't their husband cover their face?
Yeah, why doesn't why doesn't your husband dress up like Marilyn Monroe, Kelly? Do you realize you're not the only one that, like, he can do that too?
Why doesn't your husband bleach his hair blonde? I don't want to shame her because she's a lovely little lady, but she needs to get some spanks when she's wearing that white suit. That's all I'm going to say. Just a tip. Get spanks when you wear those suits. They're clinging. or get better fabric. I don't know. Sorry. That's why I'm trying to look Molly from the chest up. I will not do live streams filmed from behind, on purpose at least. I can understand why people who don't like are uncomfortable by, I don't understand people who are uncomfortable by the hijab, just the scarf. I can understand why people find the niqab and the burqa, that type. I get that. Yeah. And if I lived in a place where they were like, if it was hypothetically like, you have to wear this or you're a whore and we're going to stone you and everything bad can happen to you, you're a non-person, I would be very unhappy about that. However, this weird thing that you can just go up to a woman and be like, why do you wear that on your head? Why does my husband wear it? I'd be like, fuck off. Who the fuck are you?
Absolutely.
I'm not making you wear it. I'm not putting on your kids.
And like, this is like the thing about them all like dressing, having a bunch of white women who don't wear veils at all, who hate Islam.
In their head. It's like the ultimate clash of civilizations. I mean,
dressing up in veil and then taking their veils off is like, yeah, does nothing for anyone. Yeah, any woman in the Middle East. And
well, here it's fun.
So I was like, you know, fiercely pro let women speak, basically right up until shortly after, well, yeah, shortly after she came to Australia. But one thing that I had always like thought was a bit curious was that at none of the events that I'd ever seen that she did in England or Australia or anywhere else in the world, had there been a single woman in a hijab or like anyone visibly Muslim. There was a politician who said, like Moira Deeming, who's the Australian politician who got caught up in a big thing because she went to the Let Women Speak demonstration. She said she had a Muslim friend who was going to come to the demo, but got scared off. Yeah, that was the closest that I'd ever seen like a Muslim come to participating in this movement. And so, yeah, I just thought like, and plus it seems as though Muslim people in general are more anti-trans than the rest of the population. So if you have this ostensibly bipartisan, non-faith like movement that's anti-trans, how come you can't mobilize a single Muslim woman? And yeah,
like that people don't like it when you demonize their religion, their culture, and all the
family members,
all their menfolk. Yeah, tends to not have a broad-based appeal. Even women who are opposed to or who don't wear the hijab or don't wear the niqab and would rather that more women didn't or that their daughters didn't or their mothers didn't or whatever, they're going to stay away from that. Please, Jesus.
yeah.
So what was my thing is that, again, it's this thing that they're doing this for these women. No, this is for them. They enjoy it. They get off on it. It's a power trip. It's superiority. They go on there and be masculine and talk about Muslims, men, small penises, and they can't handle seeing women and take off your, cover your face. You look fucking ridiculous, but it's for them. I mean, this is veil face, like blackface.
Absolutely.
But this idea, again, when you have these organizations that seem to be or act like they're dominated, if not branches of Zionist organizations, you know, it's just like, but no, they really care about the Afghan women and they really care about Palestinian women. It's like nothing says you care about women like having no issue with them being bombed, sanctioned, all this stuff. That hurts women and children, and that tends to make things more conservative, especially when it's a Western fucking government and apparatus that's doing it. You know?
And like, for instance,
to the people who are against changing gender relations and sexual gender norms and sexual relation or sex between the sexes by being like, this is what the occupiers and the sanctioners and the imperialists
want.
That fighting with them, and they have a fucking point.
And like one thing that I brought up with a local TERF,
they care about these women. They care about you turning with crops. One thing
that I brought up with a local TERF was, I don't know if you know this, but like Sydney is a very gay city. It's apparently like statistically gayer than San Francisco, and also has a huge Lebanese population. So there's a huge like gay Lebanese, lots of gay Muslims in Sydney. And So the idea that they're all kind of, too conservative to be engaged with or reached on any kind of issue is bullshit. And yeah, it's definitely more reflective of the fact that the bulk of the TERFs are psychos and they don't understand how unpopular their views are either. They seem to think that that support for Palestine is like a fringe issue and most people, like normal people, support Israel and just like essentially a few trans people support Palestine. And it's like, no, dude, you have no idea what's about to happen. You guys are all essentially like somewhere between like pro South African apartheid and pro Nazi Germany, like people who are about to end up on the very wrong side of history. And if there's going to be any kind of like DC movement left after that happens, it's going to be because there was, some kind of component outside of you guys that managed to keep it going.
Well, no, and I'm sure you had this before, is that like the level of their arguments are like even below like the average TRA argument. And I don't know if
Yes.
you want to.
Yeah.
And there'll be like things like somehow, okay, there's a lot of people who have trans flags or gender ideology people who are also opposed to or pro-Palestine. Ergo, that's all they need to know. So,
which is exactly the lots of Nazis.
Or, oh, they don't have gay marriage in there. I go, what? Okay, so they don't have gay marriage or pride parades in Gaza, so we're gonna fucking kill them all? Are you out of your goddamn mind? But problem. We're the bad guys.
Which is exactly the same argument that was used against them, being like, well, Nazis agree with you, so your position must be a Nazi position. That. Yeah. Again, no pattern recognition, no no ability to comprehend that sort of stuff.
Or you don't care about gay people. I'm like, what? And then you try to tell them, like, let's look how Israel treats gay people in Gaza and Palestine. Let's look at how they do that.
Does Israel not allow interracial marriage? I thought there's like some kind of restrictions on who can get married.
I don't know how it is. I don't know. I know that the state recognizes gay marriage in Israel, but rabbis in Israel will not conduct a gay marriage. So if you get married in Cyprus and come back, the state will recognize you as a married couple, but they don't do gay marriages like rabbi gay. I guess you have a rabbi do it. As far as I know, that still is the case. I mean, Israel is so racist. I can imagine that there's not a lot of Ethiopian Jews married to Ashkenazi Jews, but I'm sure there's a few. They're also good tokens for them. It's like, look, we have this. Look at our black Zionists over here. Oh, look, we didn't kick everybody out in 1948. Look at these people. I mean, they can't go and visit their relatives. They can't do this and that. But, it's basically cool because, well, they're dangerous.
We haven't killed them.
But and I also, because they have this idea that, like, again, with women, like, that every moment of every day, inside and outside the houses across the Middle East, you're just one hair width away of being raped. If you're a woman, that seems to be what they think. And if you're a gay person, you're just one in like any moment of any day, inside, outside the house, you're in danger of being taken and pushed off a cliff or hung. That's what they think. And I'm not going to say it's easy to be an out gay person in a lot of these countries. However, what I will say, if I can, an anecdote from Gaza is that when I was there, one of the things I did practically every weekend, I would spend like a whole day at this place called Rosie's. So I'd get my hair done, not just to kind of be like, like a wash and a blow dry and a hair massage and a manicure and a pedicure and probably some sort of facial. I would just be like, because it was cheap and relatively cheap. And usually it was segregated. So women, if you went to a women's place, it'd just be women who would be doing all this stuff to you. And then men go to men. But in Rosie's, they had 2 male employees and they weren't doing the full body massage or something, but hairstyle and some facials and stuff. And these 2 people were as gay as the day is long. So gay. These 2 guys. Folks.
They were gayer than Sydney.
It was fine. I mean, they didn't say I'm gay. And I was like, I don't know if it's like a don't ask, don't tell thing. I mean, it's just like, just take that as for what you will. They were not trying to hide it. I mean, you would have to willfully try to tell it was just obvious that these people were gay. Now, maybe they're also married. I don't know. I didn't pry. But it's this idea that there's also the same thing in Iran. And I'm not saying it's great or, but that's for that society to figure out. Yeah. But it's kind of like a don't ask, don't tell thing. Like officially, it's against the law, all this stuff, but there is a gay community in all these places.
And I mean, like for all like
Obviously, any moment, any day, they're going to be like snatched out of their bed and hung from a tree.
yeah, the big one that they're all obsessed with is the like getting the one time, I'm pretty sure it was once, and it wasn't in Palestine, but that someone was thrown off a roof. And that was a problem in Australia, like in the 80s and 90s. I'm pretty sure it was in Sydney. There was some kind of gay cruising spot that was in the forests close to cliffs. And yeah, gay bashers used to go out there and essentially, herd guys off, and they would get drawn up as suicides because they would be chased off of cliff faces, like really repugnant shit. But yeah, it's not as though that type of thing is completely unheard of. And no one was like, oh, you can't go to Australia because every gay person.
And there wasn't human rights conferences talking about this, talking about, oh my God, what's going on in Sydney? I mean, why I stand with Sydney, and which would right. But no, this is the point, is that these ladies, and it's not just these ladies, but these particularly, it's quite pronounced with them because they're really out and proud with their ignorance and racism, etc.
And in the same way that like Jews can hide behind their Jewishness to be like, I can't be racist because I'm a Jew. They hide behind their womanness to be like, I can't really do bad.
You can't call a feminist racist. You can't segmentate misogynist. You can't, but you wouldn't kid a guy with glasses, would you? Yeah. There's no, so when these things happen, of course, people be like, yeah, it's terrible. I'm glad that the frequency of people being targeted because they're gay has gone down a lot of places. But what they don't realize is that when that happened, they wouldn't say, oh, that's a mark on all of Western civilization. Look what happens to women. And I'll just throw out that in 2013, something like 75% of the women who were killed in Italy were killed by their husbands or boyfriends, current or former. But yet we're not all like, I stand with the way that and the way it's presented when it happens in a Muslim country or community, totally different vocabularies. It's essentialized, it's orientalized. This idea that, women, gender relations, sexuality, modesty norms, ideas about homosexuality in Islam and before Islam was a thing. So in Arab cultures, because there were Arabs, as far as I'm aware of, that was word that that ethnicity was around before, Muhammad came down the mountain and Islam started to take off, is that these things change. And this idea that they want to pluck out, so they pluck out this atrocity parade. So they pick out the things that any bad thing that happens, real or imagined, that is carried out by a Muslim man. They pluck it out and they use that as as an exemplar of of Islam across time and space. But they don't do that, of course, when it's Christian, when it's Jewish, when it's English, when it's Canadian, when it's that. It's actually weird and just like in the cake. A Muslim is doing it.
And there aren't multiple. One of the big ones is they'll refer to.
In the headscarf too. That has not been consistent across time and space. The meaning and the reason for what women put on their head or over their face is not a constant. It's not like water being wet.
Yes. I was just going to say, and they always refer to the Muslim culture as though there is like this, however many dozens of Muslim countries, which you've got to say, like, they're all probably going to have their own culture. And then there's going to be individual cultures within those cultures, but they all just get like the Muslim culture. Yeah. Do we want to go through more of the...
In terms of, if I wanted to add again, this pivot from concern about women's rights and children's rights and safeguarding because of gender ideology and pretending that men are women and women are men and all this stuff, that DJ Lippy is another one who's with a longtime Let Women speaker. And she's also posting stuff like this. This was last week. Could this be Europe, the future of Europe? Call me as many names as you like, but men from the communities who did this are flooding into the West. Many were second or third generation Brits. I could live next door to one of the men who burnt these girls to death. Any of us could. And I'm like, okay, so I was basically like, so I was just kind of messing with her. And she said, Islam is to blame for so much damage to my country. I bet you're not even speaking to me from the UK. You never set foot here. And so I responded to her, measuring with two cups, as the Dutch would say. So they can talk about out their ass about places they have never been to, and about killing Muslims, or about Islam from the beginning of when they're before they're, day one. But others can't weigh in on their reverse colonization and rape fantasies unless they're actually living in the UK. Well, imperialism, my thing is imperialism is held out the UK, not Islam. The ruling elite in the UK or in the EU or in the United States are not dominated by Muslims. There could be a few in there. And then I had to add, by the way, I have lived in England and my mom's maiden name is Wallace, so kiss my ass, bitch. Anyway.
You know,
And then she
Yeah.
and so then I asked her, like, what specifically has Islam caused in the UK? And so that she gets back, grooming gangs, female genital mutilation, honor killings, teachers being hiding for criticizing Islam, cousin marriage, and Humza Yousaf. Humza Yousaf is he's a MP in Scotland. And I think took over briefly for when Nicola Sturgeon got kicked out or had to leave. And he's just as if he's a Muslim, but he was born in Scotland. And so then I have to, mock them. Things caused by Islam, according to English Rose Lippy: grooming, prostitution, and rape, invented by Islam. Female genital mutilation. So
Yeah.
something bad happened, and the person that did the bad thing, the very bad thing, is Muslim. Okay, they're Muslim, or their grandparents came from Pakistan and they were, whatever. Fine. But that's different than what these people say. They want to say they did it because they're
Yeah.
or because
Yeah.
Pakistani. Just like the Nazis did with the Jews. It's not that the Jews happen to do this, it's because they do this because they're Jewish. And if you don't see them doing it, it's because they're tricking you.
Yeah, the parallels between the Nazi propaganda and anti-Islam propaganda are really strong, which is so ironic because Kelly J. Keane used to speak so often about, like, we know we're the ones that, like, would have stood up during Nazi Germany and helped hide Jews and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, you're the violent anti-immigrant extremists. You would have been in the Nazi party and you would have been going on about, like, the Jews are doing this to German women and girls, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things that, like, pisses me off is they always talk about, like, X country is importing said population. And yeah, it's like, that's not how it works. You don't place an order for, like, however many people from whichever country.
Like the Chinese labor that came to build the railroad.
Exactly. And that is the whole point. The reason why there are rules about, like, refugees have certain human rights in terms of, like, where they can seek asylum and that type of thing is because that didn't exist in 1945. And so, like, I like to compare it to fire escapes in factories. When there were no fire escapes in factories or regulations around it, factories would burn down and everyone inside would die. And so they had to, like, say, no, you have to put it in. And similarly, when everyone, like, got killed in Germany, it was like, no, okay, now you can just flee and you can you can seek asylum anywhere, because if we don't let people do that, then shit like the Holocaust happens. And in the name of Jews, they're now being like, no, we need to have, like, these tight borders and everyone needs to stay where they are.
So what I want to say is that I think it's problematic and bad faith to apply racist or non-racist binary onto immigration debates. So, like, anybody that's critical of immigration or wants less immigration is, somehow racist, and those who aren't are not. There's obviously racism on both, people have things on both sides. And my thing is that it should be, and it is, possible to have a debate about immigration in terms of amount, in terms of, different populations, etc. And I get why I can totally understand why people have demographic anxieties and whatnot, and wanting to preserve that and to have more of a say about the amount of people coming in and the places they're coming in from. But that doesn't require demonizing, a whole religion of 2 billion people, or essentializing saying that, there's something essential about Pakistanis or other people or Somalis or whatever. There's just something essential in there that they're going to come and they're going to be, more a serious threat to our kids and our or women and whatnot, I would hope that it's possible to have concerns about immigration and want to limit it or whatever without demonizing and going full on racist and they're coming to rape us and eat us or whatever else. Yeah. Anyway, this is from last week. So these ladies, these genocidal feminists and these perfs, and this isn't just, oh, it was a while and then the smoke cleared a bit and they calmed down a bit and they got somewhat more measured or at least caring about their reputation with the things they would say about what's going on in Gaza. But this was August 22nd. So there was two ladies, two Palestinians from Gaza, basically talking about what is it with all these feminists who are silent through this genocide, who can't seem to see Palestinian pain and suffering or to care about what's happening with women and children. And mentioned J.K. Rowling in particular, and mentioned that it's really difficult because Palestinian children love those books. And they feel like, why hasn't she said one word about that? Yet she'll retweet all this Orientalist WDI Afghanistan stuff. They tag her and everything now. So Matt Kennard, who's a good follow, he shared these two women talking about what's with the feminists, not saying anything about us being bombed, shot, starved, assaulted like fish in a barrel, not just since October 7th, but obviously it's become quite intense there. Anyone paying attention. And so Net Moms, who is a member of Let Women Speak, I think she's like one of the office chapters or something like that. I checked her bio. And this is her response to two women, two Palestinians from Gaza, talking about the silence of most feminists and women's rights advocates in the West. And Net Mom says, why do you cover your hair? Why don't Muslim men do this? I mean, it's gross. Aja, anyone who's aware of the turf scene and Let Women Speak, Aja's been a part of that for a long time. And she's also, I don't know, she's not, she is what's the correct term? A person of color, but as far as I know, born in the UK. And her response, she's going to, again, to this post about these two Palestinians from Gaza, almost 2 years into a genocide and 75 plus years since the Nakba. This is the response. And Aja says, the Muslim men don't cover their hair because they aren't raised being told they are whores who will be raped if they don't. Anyway, Rebel.
Yeah. Yeah. She gets away with a lot. I think, was she like Jamaican or something like that? I think
I think maybe her mom comes from there, but I'm pretty sure
she's born in the UK too. Yeah. There's another dipshit. Oh, Bertie Rose. Yeah. She's like a prominent TERF. And she's like, I think, traveler, like gypsy kind of heritage. And yeah, the shit she says about other cultures, and it's like that culture has some, crazy things.
The hypocrisy is that is not true.
Yeah.
Are there some men who will tell their daughters that you're a whore and you'll be raped if you don't cover? Okay, there could be. But is that the norm? It is not the norm. It's not even close to being the norm. These people are out of their fucking minds. It's dangerous. All this stuff feeds in to dehumanizing a whole group of people.
Absolutely.
And it's like, they don't give a shit. And I wonder if they're being paid, if they just really like it. I mean, who knows? If it can couch it as anti-migrant and anti-Islam, then that's the sweet spot. So for those of you who don't know, a few days ago, this girl, 12 years old from Scotland, the police were called and she was charged with approaching people brandishing weapons. And the story fled that, oh my God, this Muslim migrant tried to rape her sister and she protected herself. And she's the one that gets in trouble with the police for trying to protect her sister from being raped by this Muslim migrant. Okay, total fucking bullshit. Just popping off on it. All these tourists, all these genocidal feminists and perfs are regurgitating it, including Bertie. And lo and behold, actually, what happened is that this girl brandished a knife and an axe, went viral with rebel rousers such as, this is from the Times or the Daily Times, Elon Musk and Tommy Robinson pitching in to claim the man filming the exchange was a migrant. Others lauded the girl as Braveheart figure defending her homeland from a predatory alien, with comparisons quickly cited about the Asian grooming gang scandal of Rotherham and Rochdale. What's happened is that these two girls came up to this couple with a knife and an axe, approached them, and that's when the guy took his camera out to film it because she was being menacing with a knife and an axe. So it's come out that the man was being threatened as a family man who has been living in the UK for 4 years, and who was accompanied by his wife on the way to shops when the incident occurred. And guess what? And check this out. People are like it was a Muslim migrant and a rapist and all this stuff. But here's the couple. Well, so Christian Bulgarians who've been in the UK legally for 4 years.
Yeah.
This is the grooming gang, nefarious Muslim migrant who that Braveheart girl had to protect her younger sister from being molested by with an axe and a knife. When in fact, they were walked to go to the shops.
And part of it, I think, they said that the police reviewed CCTVs, but that's not even good enough because I've seen people since then be like, well, he shouldn't have been filming that. And it's like, because they attacked him with, or tried to attack him, or brandished a fucking axe and a knife. You can't at least, record that. But also, that's not the first that's gone through the anti-immigrant kind of campaign. That's total bullshit. Michael posted a thing recently, King Critical posted a thing recently about how relentlessly those people are lying about all these different incidents. And one of them was a thing Tommy Robinson had reposted, which was two black guys with a white kid. And they were real close to him as he was walking. And they were basically just like, why would a black man be with white children? They must be trying to do something to this kid. And one of them was his grandson. And but that doesn't matter. Now he's being targeted by, crazy racists who've called him a groomer, completely fabricated. And they get these campaigns every couple of weeks. And no one thinks, oh, we were wrong about all the other ones. Just at least hold off for a couple of days to see whether this one turns out to be right or not before I retweet.
And it's not just quote unquote lefty papers. It's a variety of newspapers that have published what the police found. There's video, there's corroborating witnesses, but no, they know. Well, he filmed her. It's like, if you're a dude and two young girls come at you and they're being in a weird manner, and the post Me Too, fuck yeah, you're going to film that shit. As a foreigner, especially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my God. I mean, people do that all the time now. You have DJ Lippy, and she's like, is this going to happen to Europe? Are they going to cage us and make us into rape slaves? No one's coming for you. They're not that into you. They're not going to come and adopt the Sharia law. They're not coming for you.
Yeah, unless like Israel wants to plant a false flag in your country or stuff like that, you're probably going to be okay.
But it's not that Muslim people are perfect or Muslim guys do no wrong. No, if you want to have an issue with migration and the hollowing out of your country, you should look up and be like, who benefits from that? Yeah? Look at the push and pull factors, people. Push and pull factors.
Yeah.
But they just will rape us. That's the only reason we don't want them to come, because they're just barbarian rapists who will rape all of us. Okay.
Like, if that's what you're really concerned about, then stop supporting these wars in their countries that make them want to leave. Yeah, the push and pull factors. What's with the hijab?
I'm doing this because when the lovely genocidal feminists and perfs and Let Women Speak and Party of Women people, and I'm not saying everyone who participates in Let Women Speak or Party of Women or genocidal feminists or perfs, but a lot of them are, based on their own words. Feminists, what's with the hijab?
Yeah. Everything else is normal. Oh yeah, your kid's dead. That's whatever. But what's with this weird head thing?
Yeah. And this is just a sample. So you have Mother Turf. She's telling me, Islam says your face is on show, your opinions are worthless, and do you venture out without a male chaperone? It's like, whatever. Sister Vigilant said, hopefully not one male will be left once the IDF is finished. She's lovely. One of the things is that the church are really upset about the no debate, the cancel culture, the not allowing for different opinions and beliefs.
Mhm.
And Turf Ultra outed Jennifer Billick, who's, you should follow her. She's amazing on the transgender stuff, focusing on it from political economy and big tech and big pharma and whatnot.
Yeah.
Not just the pervy guys who want to, listen to us pee. She outed her. This is August 18th. If you've missed this development, 11th Hour blogs, Jennifer Billick has gone full-blown anti-Israel, pro-Hamas, and is purging all dissenters. And this is great. Again, they're brilliant people. The tiny country of Israel, which was attacked, is causing a genocide in a country whose population is growing, not shrinking. All right. Gaza's not a country, dipshit. They've been besieged. There's no Air Force. There's no Marines. There's no National Guard. There's no airplanes, helicopters, tanks. There's no air defense. There's no nothing. You have some militias, some armed resistance militias with old guns and homemade explosives who are opposed to this group of crazy people who are well funded by all the powers that be. Anyway, so somebody provided more evidence of her, I think, questioning her understanding of genocide. And she writes back, poor starving Gazans. Hey, UN, please send Gazans a few truckloads of treadmills, not food. They're in danger of being genocided by obesity. This is this
Yeah.
month.
Yeah, right.
Cassandra the Oracle. This is her to me. Tell us more about this, you crackhead. More Hollywood productions for the dumbest cunts on the planet to coo over. You should honestly be ashamed of how dumb you are. So anything that shows what's going on in Gaza or the West Bank, it's all Hollywood. It's all made up.
Which again is like a repurposed anti-Semitic trope. Instead of being like the Jews control Hollywood, it's now like it's all Hollywood. So like close to
more
Nazis.
power than the Palestinians. Clearly, when Hamas uses schools except as bases and Israel advises civilians to evacuate when it plans to target the bases, it's not genocide. If Hamas cared about Palestinian civilians, they let them shelter in the tunnels rather than using them as human shields.
With that one, it's like if they were anywhere near anything that looked like Hamas was involved, they would instantly not be civilians anymore, according to the IDF, and would then be legitimate targets. Yeah.
Hit when losing.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. It's like, since they want a totally demilitarized, totally disarmed Palestine, there's a reason why these guys wear face coverings. Yeah. And so if they were to be like, okay, well, we don't want to put anybody in danger. We're going to have our Hamas training camp here and we're going to store the stuff there. How long would that stuff last?
Yeah.
And they react to the terms of engagement sent by Israel and their Western backers, but yet they get blamed for all of it. It's just that she's a tool. But she goes on.
Yeah.
It's lovely. Hamas could release the hostages. Hamas could choose to let civilians shelter in many tunnels they've built instead of using them as human shields. Hamas has chosen to do neither of these things. Israel has the right to defend itself. I stand with Israel. Genocide Bessie. Also a TERF, cares about children, women's rights, all that stuff. She's lovely. Sal Robbins. Everyone knows Hamas terrorists use civilians as human shields. The 4 hostages IDF rescued were found in 2 separate locations. IDF is targeting Hamas, not civilians. Let's hope they find and free more hostages. Again, the hostage cult.
And like there's actual footage of the IDF strapping Palestinians to the front of armored personnel carriers and using them to, go into buildings ahead of them so they won't be targeted. Like you don't give a shit about terrorism. You don't give a shit about human shields. You don't give a shit about like any of the things that you pretend to.
It's like Israelis knew Hebrew for human shields. Israel is an imperial outpost with the state. They put their stuff in Tel Aviv around quote unquote human shields. When they finally getting some of their own freaking medicine from Iran, IDF soldiers and government and other officials hid under hospitals and in schools. They were hoping something would happen, like, oh, like they're targeting civilian things, blah, 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 blah. It's all bullshit. It's all accusation. It's also clear that these hostages are worth nothing to Israel alive and in Zionist occupied Palestine, in Gaza or killed in Gaza. That's the only use they are to the Zionists.
So like a big thing about the American like war propaganda is this kind of idea of like, war is really brutal and we're just sent there or compelled to kind of participate. But one of the ways that we rescue our humanity in some senses is through this idea of like no one left behind. And that's kind of like the whole Rambo thing, like that the Vietnamese were holding on to hostages for whatever reason and they'd been left behind and we needed to like go back and get them. And yeah, I don't think people appreciate how much like the IDF don't see it like that at all. They're like, absolutely every man left behind. In fact, if we could kill the men left behind, that would actually help us, and we would like do that if we could. Yeah.
So Rambo, one guy went in there, yeah? They didn't go, okay, we're going to kill everyone to get our POWs back.
Yeah.
Would some people be okay with that? Yeah, does that make the right thing to do or the smart thing to do? It's just the cult of the Israeli hostage is amazing.
The conspiracy theory was that after the war ended, the Viet Cong were holding on to a bunch of US soldiers for whatever reason indefinitely. And what that was used to do was to allow the US government to not have to pay any reparations or do any kind of like reconstruction in Vietnam, because they were like, well, you are secretly holding people for no reason. And so this whole we're doing it for the hostages thing has been used throughout the years.
Well, also, a lot of these people also are pro-Ukraine. So all the stuff they throw at Russia, when US, UK backed Israel does it like in spades, they don't say shit. But then they forget about international law. When it's about Israel, there's proportionality. You're supposed to distinguish. I mean, this is what they signed on to. I'm not saying they've always followed it, obviously, because we know those who make the rules get to break the rules. But on paper, at least, and according to people like Scott Ritter, he says that most of the U.S. military is at least legally obligated to follow international rules of war. I'm not saying they do all the time. Proportionality. So it's not okay to go and flatten a place
to get one guy.
You're supposed to distinguish between military targets and non-military targets. And you're supposed to use weapons that reflect that as well. Yeah? So you're not supposed to use the bunker buster thing that makes a crater in a refugee camp and then say, oh, well, we got information that there was Hamas guy there. And then like, well, Hamas was there. It's their fault.
Yeah, it's like, do none of you remember Abu Ghraib? And did any of you stop supporting the US military after Abu Ghraib?
Yeah, it's crazy. So a couple more before we wrap up. Eve Zenci, whatever. She's also part of the cult of the Israeli hostage. You retarded witch. She's talking to me. Glad about anything concerning you. It's the fact that you very likely live in a country populated with the kinds of monsters the IDF is fighting against. No, if only. It's a matter of time before your chickens come home to roost. Yeah, see, they want me to be raped and murdered. They're lovely. Trust Yope. This is another women's rights advocate. Get in the bin. Better yet, move to Gaza or Tehran. And this wasn't in response to me. This is a response to Heather Brinskell Evans and Julian Vigo because of the articles that Savage Minds has been publishing of Heather critical of the feminists helping manufacture consent for genocide and bombing campaigns, etc. So they're lovely. I think that might be all the fantastic stuff that I have. Let's see, did I miss anything?
Yeah, I was just arguing with someone about the hijab bans. Yeah. So basically she was just saying, oh, there's no choice. And so I was pointing to countries like Tunisia as one of the more kind of liberal Muslim countries. And I was like, okay, well, do you have a problem with women wearing it there? Because heaps of women don't wear it there. So it's obviously, it's not as though it's like all culturally imposed. And suddenly she was like, yes, I do have a problem there. And it's like, okay, so the mandatory thing isn't an issue. And she was like, well, it's the Middle Ages thing. And I'm like, well, what about the UK royal family? That's like a outdated.
What do Jewish people wear on their head?
Yeah. And the yarmulkes. Yeah. But then there's the wigs that they wear over their hair, Amish bonnet, all these things. And she was like, yeah, no head coverings that signify religiosity in 2025. And it's like, oh, there's no freedom of religion in 2025. That we were so progressive.
It's okay to be fascist, like it's progressive fascism. Yeah. I'm sure that all fascists probably think that what they want is for good, except for the ones who just like to beat up people and say crazy stuff. So for this person, no religiosity, no porn, no this, no that. It's this puritanical, this secular Puritan stuff. I don't know what it is. It's missionary. It's crazy. But yeah, there's no rhyme or reason to it. Oh, one last one. Trip Happy, 23 hours ago. She told me Israel could have inflicted an immediate genocide in air quotes, if they wanted to eradicate Hamas. She said this yesterday. The length of time is for the preservation of civilians. You hear that, people? Israel is doing everything it can to reduce civilian death. That's why the starving, the cutting off of water and electricity, the saying that they're all animals, the saying that even Palestinian babies are not innocent, all the stuff they say, all the stuff they then do, and then boast about it and celebrate. No, don't believe that. They are very concerned with preservation of civilians. And don't believe what in the Lakud's charter, or don't go and read what the first Zionists have said or continue to say about the land without a people for a people without a land. And you can't have a Jewish-dominated ethno-state with lots of people who aren't Jewish there. But good luck. Can you believe it?
I saw someone.
Yesterday, this crazy woman is saying this, and she probably believes it.
Yeah, you could apply the same argument to the Nazi Holocaust. Like, oh, well, they took so long. Like, why did they take so long if they were trying to kill everybody? Like, if it was a real genocide, it would have happened in 2 weeks.
Hey,
but clearly, they're like,
if you can't get your genocide done in a week,
yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day, but a genocide shouldn't take you more than a week. Every good dictator is that.
And that's in the Geneva Conventions.
Yeah, anything longer than a week isn't a genocide.
I mean, they've killed more civilians and more kids and women than any other war in recent memory. But how long did that take now?
It was great. I'm glad we got to do it.
So everybody should go, whether you're watching on one of my Morbid Symptom channels or Tara Van Dyke on X or the Substack or on Rebel of Empires. Please do like, subscribe, share, etc. If you have a question or comment about this topic, let us know, and we'll try to get to it for the next time we join streams, or he's on my stream, I'm on his stream, because unfortunately, these genocidal feminists, I don't think it's a bug. I think it might be a feature.
One thing, though, I had heard from someone in my comments said that radfems on Tumblr are way different to radfems on X, and that heaps of them have been posting about Palestine. So I've been thinking about getting onto Tumblr to see.
Genocidal feminists are a group of feminists. I'm not saying that all feminists are genocidal or are part of the cult of the Afghan woman or the cult of the Israeli hostage or a purse. No, they're probably. But the thing is that obviously there needs to be a hegemonic battle waged in feminisms. You know,
Yes.
because it's not just a few and it's not just randos. There's some really big name people. Best thing you can say about them is they hadn't said anything, but a lot of them, it fits the bill of genocide denial or apologia or outright support.
Absolutely.
You know? And so feminists need to reckon with this. There's this division. There's the thing about blaming everything on the patriarchy, which is largely fantastical. You know, like you said, capitalism dispatched with the patriarchy a while ago. And then they need to look at that craziness about attributing original sin to men and pathologizing everything that's masculine that they don't like. There's that division. And then there's the division that a lot of feminists will say, you're not feminist if you're not for trans rights. If you don't think that trans women are women in every way that matters, you're not a good feminist. Feminists need to get their freaking house in order. It's a mess. And there's a lot of mess in there. And that's why I'm saying smash the feminist patriarchy. That's going to be patriarchy, smash the feminist Zionism, fascist feminist imperialism, Orientalism, colonialism, get right with your political economy. Yeah. And hello, there's men and women. We got to figure it out, people. Anyways.
Yeah.
Rebel, bring it home, baby.
Thanks so much. I'll have a recorded video that I want to make with funny rebuttals to various stupid arguments.
Okay, so hi everyone. So that was Rebel. This has been a first podcast I've done in a few months. I had to take a bit of a reprieve. I had some projects and writing I needed to do. But Morbid Symptoms is going to be back up and running, at least one, hopefully 2 streams a week. If you're interested in being a guest or you have a topic you think we should discuss, or you want to try out being my co-host, please let me know. And please do like, follow, and subscribe. And I will have an outro thing with some details here. Hopefully I still have that if all is good. Thank you. Fight the feminist patriarchy, genocidal feminism, and perfs. You feminists out there who aren't genocidal and aren't perfs, if you wage a counter hegemonic battle for the mantle of feminism, let me know. I'd be happy to support you in that endeavor. Everybody take care. See you next time.